but we won't see any of your faces on the recording, just me and your speaker for today. We will also circulate a copy of the recording and the slides by email next week, and my lovely producer Chanel is adding a copy of the slides to the chat now for you. Sometimes people find it easiest to download those and zoom in and out as we go through the presentation. I'm not expecting any fire alarms where I am. I am in the office, but do keep an ear out for this wherever you are. And just a reminder that this is a safe space. No question is a silly question, but please do respect one another and the NCVO team here as well. You can add any comments or reflections around the things that you hear today in the chat. And I can see people are doing that already, which is brilliant. But please do use the Q&A function to ask any questions. And again, you can find that via the toolbar at the bottom. If it's not automatically there, you can click on the More button and find it there. And we've got plenty of time for Q&A later on in the session. And you should also be able to upvote questions as well. So if you see something you also really want to know the answer to, you can give that a thumbs up and we'll make sure to prioritise that. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about NCVO for anyone who is unfamiliar with us. So we are the National Council for Voluntary Organisations. NCVO is the largest network in England for charities and volunteering. And we're proud to represent and support around 17,000 voluntary organisations of all sizes, from the very biggest household name charities to the smallest community groups. And our members range from really big medical research charities to local amateur sports clubs and much more. And at their heart, much like you all on this call, they've got the aim of making the world a better place. And of course, we'd love you to join us. And Chanel's got a link there in the chat. Next slide, please. By becoming a member of NCVO, you save time and money. And as a member, you get access to information and guidance, templates, tools, downloadable tools, discounted training, access to trusted suppliers, research, and much more. And only our members have access to everything we have to offer. And just a reminder that for small charities and voluntary organisations with an income of under £30,000, membership is free. Next slide, please. Just to quickly run through what we're going to cover today. So I am running through welcome and introduction right now, and we're going to do a couple of polls before we kick things off, before I hand over to Claire from CFG, who will be giving a presentation for you, followed by plenty of time for Q&A and then some signposting before we close promptly by 12. Next slide. So by the end of this webinar, we hope that you'll be able to understand the process for raising a concern with your bank and then escalating to the Financial Ombudsman Service if needs be. We hope you'll be able to confidently communicate with your bank to resolve issues collaboratively. You'll understand relevant banking legislation and best practice for corresponding with your bank. And finally, you'll be able to find further help, guidance and templates to support your organisation's financial management and banking processes. Next slide. So why are we here? Why have we chosen to deliver a webinar on this topic? So as part of my job at NCVO, I manage our small charity help desk. And we know from the inquiries that we get on the help desk that banking is an ongoing issue for small charities. The regulator, that being the Charity Commission, and sector infrastructure like NCVO and CFG, have called on banks to improve services for charities. CFG's Charity Banking Challenges report in 2024 showed that more than half of charities had made a complaint to their bank which had not been satisfactorily resolved. And new research this year from the Charity Commission has also shown that 2 out of 5 trustees have encountered a banking issue in the past year. To try and tackle this, CFG have published a guide to help charities raise issues with their banks, and we want to build on that in this webinar. Banking is a fundamental service for charities and voluntary organisations, and we know that when it doesn't work, it threatens your ability to operate. And via this webinar, we want to build your confidence in communicating effectively with your bank. Next slide. So we'd like to start things off with a bit of a Mentimeter. I don't know who is familiar with this, if you've used this before. You can either access this via the QR code on your screen, or alternatively, Chanel has put a link in the chat and you can use the code 28082062. So the question we're posing to you now is, how do you feel about engaging with your bank? You can submit as many answers as you'd like, but let us know how you feel about the prospect of speaking to your bank right now. And if there's any issues accessing this, please let me know. Oh, fantastic. So hopefully, Claire, you can see some of those words coming up there.
Oh dear.
Not really what we like to see, but hopefully we can change some of that by the end of this webinar. Chanel, could you just put the code in the chat again, please? Somebody is struggling to access the Mentimeter. And the code? I'm sorry if you're having any issues with this. You will be able to access this even after the session as well. But hopefully you feel that your sentiments are also represented on the screen there. Oh gosh, we've got no positive words at all. This is really... Oh, I'm really sorry. I think somebody's having issues with the Mentimeter. I'm afraid I'm not able to do much about that. Okay, so we've got really, great idea, Chanel. Thank you. So we've got some, in the biggest, kind of most common words there on the screen, we've got frustrated and confused, followed by dread, overwhelmed, misunderstood, deflated, complicated, skeptical, unsure, annoyed. Okay. Yeah. No bank in town to access, difficult to contact. Okay. We're going to try and flip that around a bit today and kind of build that confidence and move away from frustration and dread and worry to some more positive words. So if we could just have the next slide, please, Frankie. Apologies. So we're just going to do a quick poll now, and we're going to ask you the same questions again at the end of the session. So Chanel's going to launch this poll for you now. There are 2 questions. How confident are you currently about how to contact your bank? And how confident are you currently about how to raise an issue with your bank? Just give people a chance to... Okay. Gonna let a couple more people participate. Quite a mixed bag, especially on that first question. Okay. Interestingly, no one has chosen very confident in terms of raising an issue with the bank, and 55% have said not confident at all. I think if we end the poll and if we just share those results so that people can see that. So how confident are you currently about how to contact your bank? Bit of a mixed bag, but most people are around the confident and somewhat confident area, with sort of the same amount of people saying not confident at all. The second question around raising an issue with the bank, however, 55% of you who've responded are not confident at all. And that's something we're hoping to change in this session. Okay. Okay. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand you over to our speaker today, Claire Mills.
Amy, thank you so much. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Claire Mills. You can call me Claire. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a white woman with blonde hair. Yes, it's out of a box, wearing a dark blue top, and I'm also quite a bit older than Amy, but we won't mention that. And it doesn't appear it, but Amy and I are actually in the same room. I've worked with Amy for a number of years, and it's a real pleasure to be here this morning working alongside NCVO and representing CFG to try and help dispel some of those really difficult feelings that you were all kindly sharing about how you feel when you think about engaging with your banks. It made me think of that famous quote from Maya Angelou that people very often won't remember what you did or what you said, but they will remember how you felt or how you made them feel. And I think, having worked closely with banks as well along this, they're not the feelings the banks want to engender in charity colleagues. They are feelings that we would really like to turn on its head. So a little bit about me. I am the co-CEO at Charity Finance Group. I have been working on banking for longer than I have been at Charity Finance Group, so probably 5 or 6 years now. Really good to see some local infrastructure bodies on the call. Takes me back to my time at NAVCA, the membership body for local infrastructure, which was where I worked before Charity Finance Group. A bit about Charity Finance Group. We are a charity ourselves, so we feel the pain as well as trying to understand it for you. And we work as a membership body and for the sector as a whole. We are infrastructure in the same way that NCVO is. So part of our function is to support our members, and part of our function is to support the sector as a whole and really work to shape a more supportive operating environment for the charity sector when it comes to anything to do with finance, reporting, governance, tax, accounting, and of course, banking and financial services is a huge part of that. So you can find out more about CFG on our website, which does need an update, but we would love to have a conversation with any of you if you're interested in working more closely with us or joining us. So we are going to think today very much, this is a practical support webinar. So how can we help you be more confident in contacting your bank, in raising an issue, and really in asking for what you're entitled to as a customer, and for making sure that the service you get is the service you deserve. Okay, next slide, please. So Amy's touched on this. A quick reminder of why this matters. So we've spent a lot of time finding out about people's experiences, whether they're staff, trustees, or volunteers across the charitable sector. Partly this dates back to 2022, when the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury called in the Charity Commission, me, and a load of people from the banks. And that was quite a scary meeting because I didn't necessarily feel that confident in talking to the banks at that point. I'm pleased to say that's changed, but what the government said at the time was things need to change. We know that the charity sector is not getting the service it needs from the banks. We ran a survey to get some qualitative and quantitative data to show that that was genuinely the case and we weren't just reporting on anecdotes, and that was 2022. We reran the survey in 2024, hoping that this would show us that some things had improved, but if not, to give us more solid evidence to be taking our requests to the banks for what they could do differently and should be doing differently. And we had over 2,000 respondents to that survey. You can download the report and have a read of it there if you want. I think one thing it may help with, which is more of a psychological help than a practical help, is that I hope it helps to know you're not alone if you don't feel you're getting that service you need from your banks. this is a common experience. It doesn't make it any better, but at least I can probably, in almost every case, reassure you that it's not you. So we will be rerunning our survey in February, March, April next year, and I would love it if all of you could take part in the survey. I would tell you it's a quick survey. Very few people will tell you it's a long survey because we want you to do surveys, but please, it's not that quick, but it is really, really powerful if we get some more data on that. And for those of you that are network bodies or have colleagues across the sector who you can easily communicate with, please do share that with them as well. Local infrastructure, I'm looking at you here because I know what amazing networks you all have in your local area. So we will be rerunning that survey and just hope you'll participate. Okay, next slide, please. So out of the Charity Banking Challenges report, we generated recommendations for 3 different groups. We had some recommendations for the regulator, for the Charity Commission, and for the regulators in Scotland and Northern Ireland as well. And that was really about keeping up the pressure, keeping up the visibility, keep writing to the chief executives of the banks to ask them what they're doing and engaging from that side, and also to engage with the Financial Conduct Authority, which regulates the banks. We had recommendations for the banks because we could really see where they could improve, firstly, their knowledge and understanding of the charitable sector and our whole ecosystem. Secondly, to improve their communications, to remember in line with the consumer duty and their service standards, the people they are talking to are not banking experts, they're not finance experts. In the case of small charities, very often they're volunteers. So to be respectful of that and to communicate in ways that are appropriate and timely. And thirdly, to think about the services and support they offer. If they're going to offer accounts for charity customers or charitable organisations, then are those accounts fit for purpose? Are they proportionate? Do they offer the things that people need? But we also included some recommendations for charities because I've worked in communications for a very long time, and I know that good communication can really help unpack some of the challenges we come across every day, and that there are things charities can do as well to be fit, to be really fit when you're going into conversations with your bank. I nearly said battle. I didn't mean battle. Making Amy laugh there. But we really want to give you some practical recommendations so that if you have to take a complaint to your bank, the last thing we want is the bank to come back and go, well, we would have sorted it out, but you haven't done this. If there are things we can do for ourselves to make sure we're in as good a situation as possible, that's really going to help. And I hope it will also help build your confidence. So there are issues around good financial governance standards, building understanding for your staff, your volunteers, and your trustees on banking, the consumer duty, and how to complain and how to communicate proactively. So that's some of the stuff that we're going to cover today. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit of what I was just talking about. Are you bank fit? Now, if you want to follow us on social media at CFG, in January, we will be running a New Year's resolution campaign. Quite often people decide that New Year, 1st of January is the time they're going to take up running or stretching, or swimming or yoga or whatever. And we've come up with a plan that we think is going to help you get bank fit through the month of January, but it is going to be a lot less effort than Couch to 5K. You can, in fact, do it from your couch. So there will be some support available there, and we will ask Amy and the team at NCVO to share that with you as well when that's coming along. But here are some things to think about in the meantime. So first of all, do you know where your governing document is, and have you read it lately? We could be talking your constitution, memorandum and articles of association, your trust deed, whatever your governing document is. It's really good to be able to put your hands on it if you need to. The bank may ask you for a copy or to see it. And also to refresh your memory about what it says, particularly around banking and finance. It's the rules for how your organisation is to operate. And it will probably include information about who should be involved in banking access or in spending decisions and all of those things. So that's my first practical tip, is check your governing document. The second one is around your public information. So those of you that are from registered charities will have a public record on the Charity Commission website. If you are also registered in Scotland, your details will be on the Oscar website. And if you're registered in Northern Ireland, then you will potentially be sending information over to the Charity Commission of Northern Ireland. If you're a company limited by guarantee as well as a charity, then you'll also have information publicly available at Companies House. And it's absolutely crucial, because banks will check, that the information in these places is accurate, up to date, and that it matches if it's in two places. So, for instance, if your record on Companies House shows that you have Timothy Andrew Smith as one of your trustees, and your record on the Charity Commission shows Tim Smith as one of your trustees, that is a discrepancy. Yes, it's the same person, I hope. If not, you've got a different problem. But please make sure that your information, if it appears on more than one register, is accurate and matches. So I've recently been through an exercise with our trustees, because I'm testing all of this before we go into our bank fit in January, to make sure that I've got from them details of what I call their government name, what is on their passport or their driving license or their official documents with the government, and then making sure that matches in both places, well, all three, because we're also registered with Oscar. So make sure that's up to date. Make sure that your address for correspondence, whether that's your premises or one of your trustees' home addresses or a volunteer's home address, make sure that that is actually up to date and accurate as well. On your website, if you have one, you should probably check that that actually matches the other information you've given as well. When banks are looking at opening new accounts, or if they're doing a know your customer check, which I'll talk about later, they will be triangulating what they've got with publicly available information on charities. So to make sure it all matches, that's going to take away one headache or one unpicking conversation that you have to have with your bank before that can get off the ground. Your filing online really matters. You're filing with the regulators, you're filing with Companies House is really important as well. And so if you have if you have an outstanding annual return, if you haven't filed your annual report and accounts or your income and expenditure statement and they are overdue, please do what you can to get those up to date and get those sorted as quickly as you can, because again, that is information that a bank may be looking at and they will want to see that. And it really demonstrates as well that you are keeping on top of your financial procedures and your compliance requirements. So I will file that under boring but important. It does matter. And it's all part as well of that wider issue of trust in charities. So if you can get up to date with anything that's outstanding, that's really going to help. And finally, on this aspect, it's time to think about your financial procedures and controls. And I will come back to that in more detail on the next slide. Next slide, please. So my next challenge to you is to think about who needs to know and what do they need to know. And you're from a range of organisations of all different shapes and sizes. So you're the expert in you. You're the people who are going to understand who you've got and who's involved, whether that is staff, volunteers or trustees. And your bank will also be interested in knowing. So there are elements here of thinking about not the individual names of people at this point, but what are the roles people play? If you have a treasurer, if you have somebody that is working in your office or is keeping on top of your admin, who are these people? What is their role and what are their responsibilities in relation to banking and finance? Have you set those out clearly in one simple document that people can read and understand? Have you got written down your financial policies, procedures and controls? And there are a number of policies that you might want to think about. Could be around conflict of interest, trustee expenses, reserves, whistleblowing, complaints. They are standard policies that you would generally expect organisations to have, and a bank may ask you to check whether you've got those and occasionally to supply them. When it comes to financial management and the procedures and controls you need to think about, hopefully you have these in place already. It is worth making sure that they are easily accessible and that you can put your hands to them quickly if you need to share them with the bank. But to make sure you've got those procedures around cash handling, around checks on donations, around bank reconciliations, authorizations for expenditure or purchases, and authorizations for payment of those, fraud prevention, anti-money laundering, cyber security. These are all elements of good financial management that banks would like to know that you have in place, and that will also help your charity be more resilient and more well governed. So it feels a little bit as though I'm saying you just need to do this so you get on better with your bank. That's not really the case, but hopefully that will be a positive byproduct of being on top of these things. Certainly, that whole idea of the roles that we talked about and the financial management procedures, it's useful to think about the separation of powers. Or separating the elements out. So if one person is authorized to purchase things or to make orders for supplies or whatever, or payroll, then there's another person who has to subsequently authorize that payment going through. So you've got a check and a balance on that, which can really help you also in terms of anti-fraud. And there are three particular sets of guidance from the Charity Commission that we'll talk about, but I'll just make a note of here, which is CC8, internal financial controls, CC19, which is about reserves if you're fortunate and have some, and CC26, which is around risk management. So they will be useful resources for you to have a look at from the Charity Commission. Next slide, please. So we're getting into the nitty-gritty now. We're getting into the meat of this, of what we do when it's all going wrong and we're not getting what we need from our banks. So see if, as part of our response to the report we wrote back in November 24 about charity banking challenges, we wanted to make life easier for charities to help them understand what to do when things aren't going particularly well. We did start calling it the How to Complain Toolkit, but we decided on a more diplomatic title in the end, Communicating with Your Bank. But it will take you through in a step-by-step basis and with some examples of sample emails to send of how to go through this whole process. So first of all, why would you want to complain to your bank? Well, the important thing here is first, is it something that the bank has control over or that they have got wrong? And part of that ties back to what I've been saying about making sure you're in a good position in terms of understanding where you're coming from and what is in place. And then you can more clearly see whether an issue is your issue, and maybe there are things you could do slightly differently, or where the bank has clearly let you down. And there are going to be times when things do go wrong with banks. It could be that they are making it as clear as mud to change your mandate, or you may have taken documents or posted documents to a bank and they've got lost, or it could be something as simple but annoying as failure to change your details when you've told them about a change of details, or sending correspondence to the wrong address. So thinking about why you're complaining is going to be really important, and then it's making sure that you can get on with that effectively. So you might want to make sure that you've got the documents or information. Always keep copies if you're sending things to your bank, and familiarize yourself with when do they expect to get back to you. So a side story. Several years ago, I worked for a member of parliament, and we would very often reply to people who had raised an issue with us about, say, their benefit problem. And we'd say, we'll take this up with the Department for Work and Pensions and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And for us sending the letter to the constituent, we knew that that meant we'd hear back from DWP in 4 weeks. So it'd be 5 weeks before we went back to the constituent. And that would be as soon as possible, would be as soon as we could reply to that letter. But for the people on the receiving end, for them, they were in desperate situation. As soon as possible meant tomorrow. And it's that expectation management around what can you reasonably expect from each other. If you have sent something to your bank, when are they reasonably going to reply to you? So it might be, we want everything fixed straight away. That isn't how the bank's going to operate. But if you know it will take them 3 weeks and it's been 3 months and you still haven't heard, then that's very good grounds for complaining. So let's have a think about this, how to raise a complaint. So I've said already, identify the concern. Think about the issue that you want to raise, that you're concerned about. Make yourself some notes and summarize the issue and gather as much evidence as you can that's relevant. So it could be documents, could be emails, records of phone conversations, whatever. The next step is to find the right people to talk to at your bank. Because before we go to the formal complaints procedure, we're going to go through the raising this with your bank normally. And you would ask the bank for the contact detail of the person responsible for managing your account. Now, some of you will be big enough in terms of income to have a relationship manager at your bank. That does make life a lot easier because you'll have a named person. But for those of you that are at the smaller end of the income scale, I'm afraid that isn't the case. So you may be trying to find a person and you're going to be dealt with by the generic customer services team. So if that's the case, you need the customer services contact details and you need to ask them when you make first contact to give you a reference number or a tracking identification so your complaint or your correspondence can be followed. If you call your bank on the phone, please take a note and write down the time and date you called, the length of time you were on the phone, and if you speak to someone, find out their name, keep a note of what was discussed, any actions promised, and I would say always ask them for a timeline and make a note of that. So we will get back to you on that issue that you've raised with us. Thank you very much. Could I just make a note of your name? When can we reasonably expect to hear from you? Will it be an email? Will it be a letter? Will it be a phone call? And make a note of all those details. So follow that up wherever possible. If you've had a phone conversation, by an email, because then that creates more of a record of what you've gone through. And there's a template in the communicating with your bank toolkit. And then if you're not satisfied at that stage, you can make a formal complaint. On the back page of the Communicating with Your Bank toolkit, there are links to, as far as we know, all the banks in the UK that offer a charity banking account, their complaints policy. So you should be able to find that quite straightforwardly in one place. But if you've gone through stage one and you're really not happy, then it's time to do this formal complaints process. And you'll need to do that in writing, either by email or by post. So start with a short and clear summary of your complaint. If you're complaining about more than one issue, number them and list them. So for example, number 1, it has taken far too long for the bank to change the mandate on our account. Number 2, correspondence from the bank has been sent to the wrong address, despite the correct address being provided several times. And you can write a short summary. So for the first one, you might say, we're unhappy about how long it's taking to change the mandate on our account. The completed forms were submitted on 29th of January 2025. Changes have still not been made. This delay has caused disruption to our ability to manage the account effectively. That's just a summary. I'm sure you can all summarise the issues that you've experienced. I'm afraid you're probably all too familiar with them. But make sure your email or letter to your bank is clearly labelled complaint. State your bank account number or your reference number. Include the names of people you've spoken to and the dates and times and copies of any paperwork. And really importantly, state how you'd like the matter to be resolved, including if you're asking for any compensation. Making a complaint is really important. Saying what you want to get out of it is you saying, this is our starting point. We want you to send us £100 for the inconvenience that we've experienced at your hands. Because if you don't ask for if you don't say what you want or what you would hope to get out of it, then you're not really setting that down as what will make it right. You want things put right, but if you want them to put things right, just say, we want you to put this right by the end of the month, after which we'll be going to the Ombudsman, or we want you to put this right and send us £100 for the inconvenience, or £200. Probably don't start at £10,000. That'll probably go nowhere, but think about the time you've spent and what would be reasonable. If this doesn't bear fruit, there's 2 things to remember. Firstly, that you have set your life, you're going through a process and it doesn't resolve for everybody, but there is another step. But the other thing to remember is that evidence or data on complaints is really important for the banks. Bear with me, because if they see a big pile of complaints coming in relation to how charity bank accounts are managed, that is how they will allocate resources for improving processes. If they don't know that there are any problems with charity bank accounts, they're not going to spend their time improving the process. They're going to spend it on another part of customer service or another part of different aspects. So I'm distracted. Well done, you got some compensation. Sorry. But yeah, bear in mind that cumulative complaints give banks evidence on where to improve their services. So it is worth doing. even if you don't get your compensation or whatever, it's quite nice for the greater good to think we're going to tell them what's going wrong. Next slide, please. So I may be over-egging the powers of the Financial Ombudsman Service with this graphic from the Justice League of America, but when I was putting these slides together, frankly, I was getting a bit fed up with stock images, so I decided to put this in. I would say they are sort of superheroes. Maybe they're desk-based superheroes because they do have special powers. So the Financial Ombudsman Service deals with complaints from members of the public, so people. If you're having a personal issue with your bank and they haven't resolved it, you can also use the Financial Ombudsman Service. Small businesses and charities and clubs and societies, voluntary organisations, community groups. You don't have to be a registered charity with annual income up to 6.5 million. So actually that's quite a hefty turnover. That's certainly putting you in the medium-sized charities bracket when we come to our charities taxonomy. So please do have a think about this if you don't get either the answer you were looking for, or perhaps more importantly, an answer that makes sense, even if it's not the answer you wanted from the bank. So the Financial Ombudsman Service, it's a free to use service and it has a very straightforward way of dealing with things. A couple of case studies I found from them. One charity complained about the time it took the bank to change its mandate, and at that time it had 80 staff, 6 million in total assets, and an annual income of 5 million. So the charity was able to use the Ombudsman Service because its annual income was below that 6.5 million. So if you're an SME, the Ombudsman also takes into account your assets and your headcount, but actually that's irrelevant when it comes to thinking about charities. So it's purely on your annual income. They also do, there's another case study I found which concluded that a club that took a complaint to the Ombudsman was involved in economic activity because it offered memberships, it did various other things. So although it wasn't a registered charity, it was carrying out economic activities and could bring its complaint to the Ombudsman because it counted as a micro enterprise or a small business. So don't feel you have to be that registered charity to go to the Ombudsman Service. You do have to meet the criteria, but there's a very clear guide on the FOS's website of how to check your eligibility. So again, you'll need details of your original complaint and the correspondence you've had with your bank, and you will need a final response letter from your bank. So saying, we've looked at your complaint and decided that we don't agree with you. And you have to leave 8 weeks after, either the final response letter or you've had 8 weeks without a response when you've made a formal complaint to the bank. So they can deal with all sorts of issues and take that up, and they can use their powers to potentially award compensation and certainly make banks speed up what they're doing. Next slide, please. So here I'm just going to touch briefly on some of the other support that's out there available to you so that you can think about that whole getting in good shape for tackling your bank and feeling more confident in doing so, because you'll know that you have gone through some of this stuff, you've done the thinking, you've put some things in place to make sure that you're addressing risk and all sorts of other things. For banks are very risk. They think about risk all the time. If I had £1 for every time somebody in a bank had said the word risk to me, I could probably bail you all out a little bit. It'd be really nice to do that. They go through various things, so you will come across acronyms and abbreviations for the banks like KYC, know your client. It's got nothing to do with chicken. Know your customer, know your client. They will ask for information, and that goes back to that whole triangulation of data. So you can reduce the risk of falling into a black hole with the bank with your data being misaligned by checking all of that data, that public-facing data about your organisation. Anti-money laundering, AML, and CFT, countering the financing of terrorism, both parts of those risk management approach by banks. And there's a big impact for them if they fail to address those. The Financial Conduct Authority regulates banks, issues banking licenses. And if there's one thing that no bank ever wants, it's its banking license to be revoked or to be reprimanded by the FCA. So that's why they're coming at it from a risk process, and they will be looking at your operations and thinking about the work that you do and how well you're thinking about risk. So I would suggest that you should have a look at CC26 and have a look at whether you're fully aware of your financial, reputational, operational, and strategic risks and what plans you have in place to address those. And there's quite a lot of work done by CFG around risk and how we can approach that whole issue of risk within charities. So do please have a look at that. We are currently working with the Charity Commission on a review of CC26. I don't know when the new updated version will be out, but if you use the old version, you still won't go far wrong. So that's a good one. Next slide, please. So the next one, I would really recommend you have a look at CC8. This is about having financial controls within your charity that help make sure that every penny that comes your way, every pound, can be well accounted for. You know where it is, you know who's got access to it, and your controls are also proportionate. So you're thinking about that whole, making sure that you're keeping your charity's assets safe, you're making informed decisions about your charity's financial position, and you're managing your legal duties properly. So the next aspect to think about is, who do you need to be involved in your financial control development? And finally, proportionality. If you're a charity with £800 a year coming in or out, your financial controls are going to be very different from if you have £8 million, purely because of the scale of that, but also the simplicity or complexity of your operations. You may also need additional financial controls if you're working in the UK and overseas, or if you're sending money overseas. And that aspect of overseas spending can be a real challenge for some of the banks. So do go and have a look at the financial controls guidance. Next slide, please. So this is further work from CC8. This is about prevention of fraud. And banks will be really pleased to know that you're taking positive actions to reduce the risk of fraud and protect your charity from losing its financial assets. So again, do work through that. And on both of these things and on the next slide as well, there may be stuff that your bank can help you with. A number of the banks, as well as infrastructure organisations like NCVO and CFG, will offer you help in trying to make sure you've got appropriate fraud awareness and for anti-fraud procedures in place. Now, Charity Anti-Fraud or Charity Fraud Awareness Week is coming up soon. I'm sure NCVO will be putting out some material around that and around helping people. I'm looking at Amy across the table and she's nodding. So there will be support out there for that, but please do keep an eye on that and have a look at CC8. Next slide, please. Oh, I think I've lost a slide, Amy.
Oh, we lost the slide.
Yeah, I've lost the slide. Never mind. What I was going to mention was cybersecurity. And there is a really good toolkit available to charities on the National Cybersecurity Centre, which you may also wish to have a look at. And again, banks are really keen on helping organisations protect themselves and be aware. A lot of the issues we see around cybersecurity, sometimes it's fraudsters or criminals wanting to get hold of your data. Sometimes they want to get hold of your money. And if they want to get hold of your money or your data, I'd really like to make sure they don't win in that. They will usually try and attack you either digitally or through what's called social engineering, where they might send an email with a link in it saying, I need to book a meeting with you, please book that quickly. They'll very often use urgency and a combination of urgency and authority. So we see emails quite often saying, I'm the CEO and I need you to follow this link right now. No, it's not from me, because I wouldn't put that. So please train your people in that. At the heart of all these things, at the heart of risk, anti-fraud, cybersecurity, and running your organisation is people. And at the heart of the banks, it's people as well. You know, whoever you talk to at the bank, they haven't got up that morning and thought, I would really like to go to work to make life difficult for charities. I've spoken to an awful lot of people in banks, and they all generally want to do the right thing by their customers. Banks are massive, and it can take time to change procedures and take time to change what they do. We have done some joint training with NCVO for one of the high street banks That's been really well received, but we know there's still a huge number of people out there that we want to get in front of and help understand the charity sector, understand the work that you do and the impact that you're having on people's lives, and asking them as part of our charity ecosystem, because we're all interconnected, asking them to do better at helping you so you can do what you do with your beneficiaries. Because it's all about the people, isn't it? We all want to change the world. That's why we're here. I hope you're feeling more optimistic, but I'm going to wait for the wait for the polls to find out. We do have contacts at some of the banks, people we can get in touch with. So if you've got an ongoing problem that's really been grinding your gears for a very long time, do drop me a line, or drop Amy a line, and we will pass that on to the bank. I can't promise that we will solve everything, but we will certainly try and make sure it gets in front of the right people. But now it's over to you, because I want to know what burning questions you've been coming up with during the course of my wittering on, and I hope it's been useful. So, Amy, back to you. And how are we doing with questions?
It's definitely been useful, and I'm very sorry that I seem to have lost one of Claire's slides, so we'll make sure that that's included in the follow-up. I'm just going to mute for a second because I just need to cough, and I've been waiting to cough for the whole time.
There you go.
Sorry, everyone. I'm just recovering from a bit of a nasty cough. I think it's going round. So thank you very much, Claire. I personally found that so helpful. Some really practical guidance in really plain English, which I think will be really useful for everyone to take away. So there you go, some clapping for you.
That's nice.
Always nice. Feel free to give Claire some feedback in the chat. I'm sure she'd love that. So we've got some time now for Q&A. I can see that people have been putting some questions in the Q&A function, which is fantastic. So I'm just going to pick up on some of those. Oh, great feedback there. Thank you, Liz. So the first question I'm going to pick up on, because this comes up time and time again on the help desk in terms of when people are setting up a new organisation, that chicken and egg question. Do you need a bank account to register with the Charity Commission? Do you need a charity number to open a bank account? The second question's for you, really.
Yeah. So, no, you don't need a charity number to register to open a bank account. You can usually open a community account, which the bank will then transfer to a charity or convert to a charity account if that's the setup they have. It's best to be really clear with the bank and say, we would like to open this account on this basis. We are then going to do this second step of registering as a charity. Which account would you recommend that we use for that? Which of your products is going to be most suitable for us? I think that opens a kind of wider question, really, which is, what do you need from a bank account? And it's something that I think quite often we lose sight of. We go, well, that one's free, so we need that one. Or this one's my local branch, maybe. So we'll open an account with them. I would start from a slightly different place. I'd think about, what are you going to be doing with your bank account? How many times are you going to be taking payments out of it? Are you going to be depositing cash, checks? Remember checks? Are you going to be making deposits in person? Do you need that facility to be able to do that in a bank branch, at a post office, or in another way? So what are you going to do on a day-to-day that's going to affect your bank account? And then look around and see which of the banks best meets your needs, and then have that conversation about, we're a community group at the moment. There's 5 of us. We're going to apply to the Charity Commission for registration. The more information you can share with the bank about what your plans are on that basis, the better the people at the bank will be able to advise you on the right product. I'm going to caveat that by saying they might not always get it right, but at least you're giving them the information. So remember what I was saying about giving them the opportunity to get it right, and by giving them all the information. And then if they get it wrong, you've got a valid reason for complaining. If you go in and just open a random account, How easy is that? Not easy. But just think about what you're going to need for the long term, or at least the next couple of years. You may find that you're going to, if you're going to be opening, taking contracts, for instance, or employing staff, all of those, you might need a different account. So chicken and egg, back to the beginning. You don't need a charity commission to open an account, but if you're going to subsequently get a charity commission registration, make sure the bank's aware of that.
So it's that open communication with the bank from the start. And just to expand on that a bit further, for somebody completely new to this, how do they go about choosing the right bank account?
Well, I think that's a really good question. And first, I would say assess what you're going to need that bank account for, and then try and see which bank accounts are out there that match your requirements. One of the things, as I say, that we hear a lot about in charity land is free. What's a free bank account? Why should I have to pay for banking when I do this? I think there are two things to weigh up there. Firstly, I think the idea of free banking comes very much from the personal banking space, and you get that in new organisations, in volunteer run and led organisations, because we're all used to free current accounts, right? And I can remember back in the day when the first free current accounts were introduced. I think it was TSB in the 80s. And they went, we're not going to charge anybody for banking anymore. And it was this whole race to get every high street bank offering free banking for individual customers. And that's quite a long time ago. So we've lost sight of the fact that banking is a service that sometimes you might need to pay for. I would say small businesses or businesses are used to there being a charge for banking in the same way there's a charge for electricity or for having your accounts done or for sorting out your tax computation. So you are buying a service. If you're not paying through a monthly fee, then you will be paying because, in a way, because you won't be getting interest on any deposits you've got. That's where the bank makes some money. And you may also be paying in terms of time. So if you're choosing a free bank, but it's going to take your volunteers or your staff significant amounts of time to do what you need to do, it may be worth thinking about a different account where you pay a small charge, but everything works for you. It's down to you in terms of your preference. So that's the first thing I would say. Think about what you need rather than what the banks are offering. Think about what you need and then find what matches that. Now, UK Finance, we've worked quite closely with them over a number of years. Sometimes they're really helpful. And one of the things they have done is produce an online guide for the voluntary sector, and it does have some lists of accounts that are available in it. It's worth a look. I can't promise it'll be up to date because I don't have any control over it, but it is worth a look to see if that points you in the right direction. And again, on the back of our How to Communicate Effectively toolkit, the links are to the complaints policies, but it's also a handy link of banks that do offer charity accounts. So I hope that's really helpful.
Thank you, Claire. And I've got another question here. It might be a bit difficult for you to answer because I imagine it differs from bank to bank, from branch to branch as well. Could a group set up a bank account with just a terms of reference rather than a constitution or another type of governing document?
I think it would depend on the bank, but you could certainly talk to them about a community account. Some of those community accounts are very much ad hoc, therefore, a group of people coming together to solve an issue or put something together. They may be the very beginning of their journey. So I would just talk to the bank and say, this is what we've got at the moment. We've got terms of reference. We've got these people. We're all prepared to prove our identity. You'd be very much unincorporated, so you'd be thinking about the risks associated with being unincorporated, but they're probably not the risks that are going to come from your bank account. Presumably, this group of people aren't going to be opening an account and then immediately asking for a £5,000 overdraft and spending it all on crisps. So as long as you are operating within your terms of reference and you're having that conversation with the bank, I don't see why they shouldn't be able to open an account.
Thanks, Claire. There's a follow-up question to that, actually, and I imagine you're going to say talk to the bank. Somebody who's got a community account and they're hoping to grow, will they need to change their account?
Not necessarily. It depends what constituted form they take and whether they decide that they want to change the account. Again, we've seen, so one of the high street banks offers a community account and a charities account. One of those accounts, the community account, attracts charges. The charities account is free to use. So it might be that you think it's worth the changing of the account to get the free banking, or it might be that the community account meets your needs so perfectly and is so well set up that you're prepared to pay the charge to just keep life simple. So it's not a requirement. It's a bit like if you go into a shop and you want to buy a new winter coat, and there'll be a couple of winter coats and they'll be suitable for different weathers. You're going to have to decide which weather you're going to experience the most often and what's going to work for you when you're going out and about in your winter coat.
I like that. There's been a couple of questions that have just picked up on specific things you said during your presentation, Claire. I don't want to put you on the spot, but we'll try with it. Somebody asked, you mentioned a list of financial policies that you'd recommend people have in place.
Yeah.
Could you reiterate those again for us?
If I can find the right, look, old school bits of paper.
They're on a spot of it. I know that was really useful information.
I think there are all sorts, it's the wrong bits of paper. There are all sorts of lists online that you can find of policies to have. But I would certainly make sure you've got a conflict of interest policy and a trustee expenses policy if you ever pay any trustees expenses, just because that's really clear about what you're going to pay and what you're not going to pay. If you have reserves policies, if you have reserves, have a reserves policy. If you have paid members of staff in particular, you should think about a whistleblowing policy. And for every organisation, I'd really recommend you have a complaints policy, because that is something that people will hopefully never use, but it shows that you're open to conversations and you're open to thinking about if things go wrong. Just on the back of that, if you've got a website, you should also have your privacy policy and your cookies policy attached to that so people can find them. And if you have any engagement with, to be honest, if you have any engagement with anybody, whatever their age or circumstances, you probably need a safeguarding policy as well. Even if it's a very simple safeguarding policy that says, talk to this person if you have any concerns. But again, NCVO is brilliant on stuff like that. So please have a look at NCVO's list on what you might need for that.
And in fact, actually, what we can do in the follow-up email is just include there the list of core policies that all voluntary organisations should have, which we get asked a lot on the help desk. So yeah, always happy to help with that. There was a question I've just missed there, Claire, which is a bit of a follow-up to the previous question around if an organisation is potentially going to grow. Just to kind of expand on that, if an organisation is potentially going to change its legal structure, what's the best way to communicate that with the bank?
So one of the key things I'd say about any communication with the bank is to be proactive and try and do it ahead of time. If you can tell them what you're planning, then they are aware and they can also support you and potentially advise you if there are things you need to do. That proactive communication could be around something as complex as taking on a big contract or changing your governance structure. But actually, it's really good practice to get in the habit of it. So one of the reasons we see, start from a different place. I talked about banks being focused on risk all the time, focused on risk. And they will use various metrics and data points to flag up potential risks or unusual activity on accounts. So if, for instance, you are a £5,000 or a £25,000 a year organisation and you suddenly acquire, you're awarded a grant of £100,000 or you're left a legacy of £80,000, a big amount like that hitting your bank account, it's good news for you, right? You've suddenly got all the money. You can get on with do what you do. But for the bank, that's a big red flag. That's like, whoa, their account has bumbled along at 25,000 a year. 25,000, it's dipped down to 5,000, it's gone up to 25,000, it's stayed around that level, and suddenly it's got a big deposit. So that's the sort of thing that can be a red flag for the bank. If you know that you're going to be getting that grant income, or you know that you're going to be getting that legacy, contact the bank beforehand and say, in the next few weeks, we are expecting a large deposit. The same if you're buying something and you've got a big expenditure going out, or you've suddenly got, lots of expenses coming out, lots of payments coming out, whereas normally, say if you're 5 transactions a month and then for some reason you're going to be paying out 100 things in 1 month, that's the sort of activity that can really flag with the bank that they need to look at it a bit more. So the more information they've got ahead of time, the more you can proactively communicate, the better. We're coming up to December, and for a lot of charities, that's a time when they see an influx in income because of donations. Other times can be around Eid or around on Ramadan. So if you have a period of the year when you know you're likely to get more public donations, or you're having a big fundraising event, and that's going to change what the kind of usual profile of your account, let the bank know. Even if if you encounter problems later as a result of that and they've flagged your account and that's caused an issue, you can say, well, we did tell you. And it's a lot easier to unpick from that, but we did tell you, than it is to go, oh yeah, it was all about this. Because if they're having to ask the questions first and you can't demonstrate that, then they're more suspicious. Suspicious is probably the wrong word. They're more risk aware. They've got a lot to lose.
Thanks, Claire. And just to pick up on another thing that you mentioned in your presentation there, you talked about some organisations or charities being big enough to have a relationship manager. And again, I feel like this might be difficult to answer because it may vary from bank to bank. Have you an idea of how big an organisation would have to be to have a relationship manager?
So I think banks are one of those really interesting institutions. And it's a bit like when we talk about the NHS, we just think of it as one NHS. And I know there are people on this call who deal with the NHS, and they'll know that there are lots of different elements to the NHS and they don't talk to each other. Banks, I was surprised to find some years ago, are similar. So they may well have the retail bank, which deals with community accounts, charity accounts up to a certain amount. And then they'll have the business bank, which might handle those charity accounts instead of it being in the retail bank, but it's where they look after small businesses. Charities are often alongside that. And then they'll have the commercial bank, and then there'll be the investment bank. We won't talk about those. But the commercial bank will deal with big business, big organisations. So if you're a charity with £100 million a year income, I know exactly who you're going to talk to at NatWest. I know exactly who you're going to talk to at Barclays, because I've got their numbers, and that's the charities they deal with. If you're in the sort of middle bracket of 5 million upwards, even CFG, we're a 2 million year organisation. We have a relationship manager at Unity. I can see Unity are on the call. Hello. And that's really helpful for us because it means if I need to find something out, I ring Megan and it's great. Once you get under 1 million or under 2 million, it's much less likely you'll have a relationship manager. The bank cut-off points for different things are at different levels, so it does depend who you bank with. But certainly you probably need to be over like 1.5 million before you're going to get that far.
Thanks, Claire. There's an interesting comment in the chat there saying that as part of their monthly fee, that includes having a relationship manager.
Oh, that's good.
At Metro.
That's good.
So that's really good information to have there. Okay, got a couple more questions I'm just going to pick up on. Thank you for submitting those. So a question here in the Q&A. How is it best to introduce yourself to the bank as an external individual supporting a charity, e.g. a freelancer or accountant, so that they will actually communicate with you?
So that's a really tricky question. A lot of that is going to come down to, first of all, the charity or the charitable organisation having all of its communication details set up properly, and then a formal letter from that organisation saying that you're entitled to information. Again, I feel like I'm not being very helpful here because I keep saying talk to the bank, and I know there's a question like how do you know who to talk to? How do you find the they at the bank? It is going to be a case of really asking the organisation to introduce you formally by letter or email using their usual communication channel, not challenge. Challenges on the brain.
And another question here, Claire, which I think it is going to come down to what you talked about right at the beginning about making sure that you've got everything in order as well. Somebody's asked who should a bank contact when it has an issue, and the example they've given here is that their bank just emailed one of their trustees saying that if something wasn't done by a certain date, they'd block the account. The trustee in question was on holiday, and the finance officer who would usually deal with things was not able to get the bank to act on their behalf.
Yeah, it's a common issue. and it's something we do hear of. And somewhere back in the day, somebody at your organisation will have ticked a box on a form that says this is the person to talk to. So that again is think about your kind of getting fit. Think about getting fit and check with the bank if you can who they've got down as their main point of contact. Ask if there's a way to add another point of contact so you've always got that built-in redundancy, or even if you can have three. So, should everything be copied to the finance manager if it's sent to one of the trustees? You can also, although it may be a bit tricky, potentially put in arrangements. So if somebody's going away, if one of your trustees is going to Australia for 6 weeks, contact the bank beforehand. This person is going to be out of the country for this length of time, and over this period, this is the primary contact. I really hope that when you're doing all these things proactively and responsibly and effectively, that they are being responded to appropriately and effectively by the banks. I can't guarantee it, but certainly if you're doing the right things, you've got a better chance of things going right.
Yeah, exactly. So the message I think here is to be as proactive as you can, to communicate things in advance, and like you say, make sure you're fit to bank.
Fit to bank. Fit to bank.
And we've got a final question, but I think I know what the answer is going to be.
Is it talk to the bank?
It's talk to the bank. No, it's about figuring out what works for you, because the question is around there's no branch in the town anymore. Would it be worth moving to an online bank? Claire can't answer that, and neither can I, because it's really about weighing up what works best for you as an organisation. So just kind of going back to what Claire was saying before in terms of what do you need from your bank, rather than just kind of looking at what's already there in front of you. Don't know if there's anything else to add there.
I think it's always about that focusing on what your needs are and then trying to find the solution to fit you, rather than trying to fit what you're doing into somebody else's model. It's something that as consumers generally we've got a lot better at doing. We used to never switch our electricity and gas, did we? You never switched your bank. You started work and you opened a bank account in the branch that was nearest to where you were working, and then you stayed there for the next 100 years, and everybody told you that was a good idea because then you'd be able to get a mortgage if you're as old as me. So it's more about using the services that are fit for what you need. If your broadband supplier is not giving you good broadband, switch to somebody else. It's the same with banks. I really appreciate the comment somebody's put in there, talk to the bank is impossible. It's hard. It is hard. I'm not underestimating how hard it can be. All I can say, you can't control necessarily what other people do, but you've got a lot of control over what you do. And the more you're trying to do the right thing, the better position you're in, particularly if you need to go down that complaint route or even to the Financial Ombudsman Service.
We do really empathise with that sentiment, for sure. I think we've both probably got experience of that ourselves as well. I think I've gone through all of the questions, which is brilliant. I just wanted to flag, when it comes to choosing a bank and making sure that it suits your needs, I did put that resource that Claire mentioned from UK Finance in the chat, and that does include a bit of a comparison tool as well, to kind of drill down into what each bank offers, and what might suit your needs best. Anything else to add, Claire? The final.
I hope I've cheered you up. I hope I've made you feel supported. I hope you'll remember how this has made you feel, even if you don't necessarily remember what I did or what I said. But we will be giving you some chance to recap on that by sending out the slides and resources as well. But back to you, Amy, and I think we've got some more polling to do.
Yeah, we do indeed. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we asked you right at the start there about your confidence. And we're really hoping that we might have shifted the dial just a little bit. So Chanel's going to launch a new poll for us. How confident are you now about how to contact your bank? And how confident are you now about raising an issue with your bank? Well, this is very good.
I am looking forward to seeing the results of this.
I can already see kind of instinctively that this is much better. Okay. Brilliant. Just give people a couple more minutes if anybody else would like to participate. I can see a few more people still sharing their responses.
This to me is more exciting than the voting on Strictly by a long way, by a long shot.
I'll just see if we can just get a couple more people participating.
If this hasn't worked, Amy, perhaps you and I could take over from Tess and Claudia.
We are taking a bit of a risk here, aren't we?
We are.
Be kind. No. Okay, if we could just end that poll, please, Chanel, and just share those results. So you'll see that in the first question, in terms of how confident people are in contacting the bank, we've got nobody now saying not confident at all, which is really reassuring. And the majority of people who answered there, 53% have said confident, with 12% saying very confident. And I know that's an improvement on the first poll. And I'll share those exact results with Claire afterwards as well. I should have really taken a note of that. And in terms of how confident people are in raising an issue with the bank, again, that's improved because I know the majority of people said that they were not confident at all. Oh, Chanel, if you can put it in the chat, that would be great.
And I would just like to say, I hope the final poll will be, will you be filling in my survey in February, March time? I hope that would get 100% yeses, and that you'll share it with your networks. Thank you.
Yeah, Chanel's put those poll results in the chat there if anybody is interested in those. One other thing I was going to ask you to do is, if you haven't got a next action in mind, is there something you're going to do as a result of this webinar? We'd love to hear what that's going to be. So if you have an idea of a next step you're going to take, is that going to be that you make sure the information is correct that you've got with the bank? Is it going to be reaching out to the bank? If you feel confident in sharing that in the chat with us, we'd love to know what you're going to do. And if I could just have the next slide, please, Frankie. I know I've done quite a lot of polls with you today, but this is my final one, I promise. We've just got a little bit of a snap feedback poll just before we signpost you onto some resources. We'd love to get your initial thoughts on how you found today's webinar. It's really valuable to me and the team at NCVO to make sure that we are hitting the mark, we are delivering the right kind of content for you, and that we can keep improving. Thank you everyone for filling that in. Just going to give it a couple more minutes before I signpost you onto some resources. And just a reminder that when you finish the Zoom today, if you do have a couple of minutes, and it does only take a couple of minutes, I've done it myself, there will also be a short feedback form that'll appear in your browser when you leave today's webinar. And we'd love to know what you enjoyed, what you valued, and where we can make improvements. Some lovely feedback coming in the chat as well, and that's an action I think that Glynis is going to take there.
I love that, Glynis. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Okay. If anybody else has time to just fill in that feedback poll before we close it, that'll be much appreciated.
So much to do. Oh, Jane, I'm so sorry if we've given you lots to do. Please drop me a line. Amy, could they have my email address, please, in the chat? Because I can't type it to everybody. But yeah, drop me a line. Let me know how you're getting on. And as I said, if there's anything with a particular bank, yeah, can't promise I'll fix it, but might be able to help you pass it along a little bit.
There you go.
Oh, thanks, Chanel.
Chanel's on it. Yeah. I think we've closed that poll now, Chanel. If we can just have the next slide, please. And I won't try and kind of cover everything off in this slide. This is just a few places where you can find some help and guidance. There's obviously been lots of other things popping up in the chat as well, which we will make sure to include in the follow-up email. So we've got some banking guidance and financial management guidance from NCVO. And then from CFG, we've got the guide on communicating with your bank that we spoke about, as well as the charity banking challenges report. And we may put some other links to some other CFG resources and training in the follow-up email as well. I've included their CC8 from the Charity Commission, Internal Financial Controls for Charities, but I know Claire also mentioned a couple of other Charity Commission resources, which we'll put in the follow-up email, as well as that list of core policies that you should really have in place. I've linked there to financial management training from NCVO, and a reminder that NCVO members get a 30% discount on that. And I just wanted to remind everybody of our small charity help desk. So we are open Monday to Friday, 10 till 4 by phone and email. You've got me, you've got Frankie who's on the call at the moment, as well as Andrea on the help desk. And that's for any questions around the setup or running of your voluntary organisation. If there's anything that you feel didn't quite fit into this webinar, but you'd still like to ask a question about it, please do come to us on the help desk. Although just a caveat that we are extremely busy right now, but we do make sure to come back to everybody. Just my final slides, please, Frankie. So I just wanted to flag with you our next free practical support webinar. We're taking a little bit of break in December. Don't know about you all, but we are crawling towards the end of the year. And I know everybody's feeling quite tired. But hopefully we've got an exciting webinar all about charity trading for you in January, on the 28th of January, 2 till 3:30, and that is completely free. You can book on using the QR code there, and Chanel has helpfully put that in the chat as well. And just my final slide. All that leaves me to say now is a huge thank you. Thank you to all of you for joining us today and sticking with us till the end. Thank you to my NCVO support team, Frankie and Chanel, for all of their help in getting this off the ground. And a huge thank you to our presenter today, sat opposite me, Claire, for really explaining that in such plain English. I think I saw a comment saying that in the chat, and I wholeheartedly agree. Really practical, useful guidance that I hope you'll be able to put into practice straight away.
No, thank you for having me.
And just a QR code on the screen there, which will take you to some more information about joining NCVO as a member, if you're interested in doing so. A reminder that for organisations with an income of under 30k, that will be free for you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Claire.